Okay, let's do a actual physics lesson now so you can see a couple of differences. Let's start off with mass. Mass is an important entity in physics, and we use a small letter m to represent mass, the first letter of it. And it's an English letter. Often Greek letters are used. But before we go any further, we use the m and we call it a variable because it can take on varying numbers. Like for example, in my case, it would be say mass is equal to 103 kilograms. In your case, m might be 70 kilograms, and so on. So it varies. That's why it's called a variable. Now, this whole concept of using variables, it's a subset of mathematics called algebra, and you're obviously familiar with it. But what you're not familiar or might not be familiar with is the word al at the start of algebra. That's a hint that it's an Arabic word. The scholars of 1,000 years ago, they were all Al-Ghazali, and it was either Al or Ibn, Ibn being son of. Ibn Sina is the son of Sina. So his name wasn't Sina. His father's name was Sina. He was Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, Al-Haytham, and so on. So this is how the Arab names work, up till today. And a name and a surname is relatively young, like a couple of centuries ago when surnames were introduced. And some of the Europeans have got really strange surnames. I lectured at UWC when the department head of IT's name was By the Way, Bytheway. That was his surname. And, people were asked to come up with surnames, and they never had surnames a couple of centuries ago. Europeans, I'm talking about. And so they just gave in any stuff, like some of them said, okay, we'll also go with like son of Richard, so like Richardson, or Mitchelson, or Robertson, son of Robert. And so you have all these surnames, okay? But to get back to the point, algebra was actually invented by Al-Khawarizmi, an Islamic scholar. And he also invented the algorithm because his name, Al-Khawarizmi, is where the word algorithm comes from. It's the anglicized version of his name. I mean, the Europeans are not going to say Al-Khawarizmi or Al-Khawarizm. So it's algorithm. So to go back to algebra, Al-Khawarizmi was investigating trinomials, in mathematics, x squared and x and then no x. So like 2x squared plus 3x plus 4. That's a trinomial. But if you look at his writings, he did it in full Arabic. He wrote it in Arabic, full words. How you must balance it and how you must, simplify it and all of that. And then eventually he realized, why can't I use letters instead of saying the number on the left now has a value of 10? Why can't I just say like ta equals 10 or ta is 10? And that was the invention of algebra. Obviously, remember, Al-Ghazali never wrote in English. So he didn't use XYZ like we do today. He used Arabic. He wrote in Arabic. And so he obviously used Arabic letters for algebra, but he invented algebra. More importantly, we need to ask ourselves, and now this is not written anywhere, okay? This is my idea. What do we learn from Al-Khawarizmi's algebra? He took Arabic and he translated it into mathematics. by writing it out in Arabic. He wrote mathematics in Arabic, right? So, first of all, we need to look at mathematics is a language. That's the first thing. And we need to understand that Al-Khawarizmi taught us to translate the Arabic language into the language of mathematics. And I'm actually busy doing that now. I'm by my third, I did 13 surahs. I think I'm by my 14th one. And I'm using the opportunity to do hifz at the same time, to memorize the Quran. But I read up the history of each surah, like why, how, and wherefore. And then I play it in my earphones. Now I lost my earphones also. I don't know where they are. But I've also got stuck on, the Asma'ul Husna, the 99 names. And that's another thing, Asma'ul Husna does not mean 99 names. The number 99 is not in there. And Husna means beautiful. And Asma are the names. And in Arabic, the adjective comes afterwards, so it's like the name's beautiful. In English, we say the beautiful names. And the word Allah is nowhere there. It's Alma, Asma, names, Ul of Husna, beauty. So it's a beautiful name. And we know that there are 99 names, and we know that they are the names of Allah. But my point is, Al Asma'ul Husna does not mean the 99 names of Allah. And that's what I picked up from the way people talk. You say, Al Asma'ul Husna, oh, that sounds familiar. When I was much younger, oh no, that's the 99 names of Allah. It is, yes, but it doesn't mean that you say it like that. A young person ends up thinking that Asma'ul Husna means 99 names. But anyway, I'm talking about physics now, but can you see where I am? So I'm busy memorizing the Asma'ul Husna. Most of us know the first part of it, but as it gets further, and so that's why I'm stuck on the Asma'ul Husna, and I haven't, for about 2 months now, I haven't gone further with Surah number 14, but I've done Surah number 13. And just by the way, also, the ones of you who are doing hifz, you shouldn't rush through it. Like you're just memorizing it, but that's all you get from it. And then you go recite when it's Taraweeh. And I know that they learn with Tajweed and Tanween, reciting properly and all of that. But the Nabi himself was reprimanded for trying to rush to memorize the surahs. And he was told by Allah, why are you rushing? You're supposed to let it soak into you. It must become part of you. You mustn't rush to get it just into your head. It must become your whole body. It must become you. And we all know that Sidina Aisha, she collected over 2,000 ahadith. And when they asked her, what is your description of the Nabi? She said he was Al Quran, because he learned, Allah told him through Jibreel alayhi salam, of course, don't rush. Let the surah become part of you. So he memorized the whole Quran, and so he was the Quran, not just in his head or in his heart. So, in keeping with following Sunnah, that is what I'm trying to do. And I'm also converting the Quran into mathematics, learning from Al-Khawarizmi. And the mathematics that I'm using is obviously predicate logic, because I explained in a previous episode that they use the mathematics branch of statistics, and we use the mathematics branch of predicate logic, which is very closely connected to computers, because Al-Khawarizmi invented computers. Yep. The mathematical concept called the algorithm, he invented it. And people laughed at him. They said, like, why are you giving us a baking recipe here? Because this is not mathematics. And he said, okay, laugh, but one day somebody will build a machine. This is now 1,000 years ago, more or less. One day somebody will build a machine which will prove to you that this is a mathematical concept. And lo and behold, in 1950 odd, Charles Babbage built the first computer, a Euro person. You see my point. Well, I mean, we're supposed to, our predecessors thought up the mathematical concept. So we are supposed to be building. Where's our builders? I mean, nobody, no Muslim country is except Malaysia, who's building memory chips. They're always from the 90s already. They're still building memory chips. You know, the Americans put a couple of factories there. You know, they just lifted it up. I think it was from Singapore. They put it in Malaysia in the 90s, and they're still churning out memory chips. They can't churn out GPUs or CPUs, but they're churning out memory chips. And if you open it up, you'll see made in Malaysia on the memory chips. Yeah. So if we come back to mathematics, right? So we learn physics with in English. So instead of using a ba or a ta, we use a m because we use the English alphabet, right? Okay, all good and well, no problem. It's the same thing. So M stands for mass, right? And you know, mass appears all over in Newton's three equations. The first one, F equals ma, that's M for mass there. In his gravitational equation, F equals g m1 times m2 over r squared or d squared. That's two different masses of two different objects that has a gravitational force between them. That's what he said. I don't agree with him, but the other one was the inertia. You know, you have to overcome the inertia. And then it also depends on the object's mass. You know, the more mass it is, the more inertia it has. So it will stand still or it will continue moving forever if it's not acted upon by an external force. And the velocity at which it moves and how it accelerates in the beginning depends directly on its mass. So all three Newton's equations has m in it, mass. And you know, everybody knows Einstein's equation, E equal mc squared. It's the same mass, m. So it depends on how much the mass of something is, will depend on how much energy it gives off. You know, so that's why the plutonium bomb, which will add a bigger mass, gave a bigger boom because it gave off more energy. But now the big question, and this is my question, is what is mass? You know, when we were taught mass, I was all confused in standard 8 because we were taught that mass is mass in kilograms, but you don't, you weigh 100, I weigh 100 and, okay, that time I weighed 80 kilograms because I played rugby in the, just made it to play under 80 kilograms. And so my mass is 80, but I weigh 80, but my weight is 800 newtons. You know, so how does this work? You know, I don't understand it. And you know, back then you couldn't ask questions that you just sit with your finger and talk, you get a hiding. Two cuts, yeah. They give you two cuts for talking in class. Things were very quiet back then. In the 70s, everywhere was quiet and everybody was well behaved. Not like now, everybody's talking wherever you go. Like, in my opinion, I think everybody's got their own opinion. But anyway, it's not like that all over. But it's in too many places it's like that. And so you couldn't ask, you know, you just accept that mass is your weight, like you weigh 100 kilograms, but it's also not your weight. And what is mass? What is it? How much you mass? I mass. In any case, what I did was I took mass and I changed it into volume times density. So the volume that you occupy and the density of your body. Because if you take a balloon and you blow it up big, then it's got a huge volume, but it's not dense at all. I mean, it's full of air. So it's actually hollow. So the mass is not only proportional to the volume, it's also proportional to the density of the object. And if you multiply density and volume together, you get kilograms. So to describe mass in that way, which is my contribution, by the way, Elon Musk, who did physics, that's in my thesis. You know, so I rewrote all Einstein and Newton's equations like that. So instead of having F equals ma, I call it A equals rho times V, volume times density times A. And I don't call it F because they all about forces. All Newton's equations is force, 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 all three. And you know, his equations were so successful, and that's why the study of physics is important, because physics is a study of everything and it influences everything. It influences society. His equations were so successful, you know, he could lob a cannonball exactly where they wanted it to fall. They could throw stones and stuff and shoot arrows and calculate where it's going to fall. And, you know, because you could you could predict trajectories through space with Newtonian physics. And so it was so successful that they just adopted force, and everything about their society became about force. They used Newtonian physics in the 17th century to exert force and to take over people's lands by force. They forced their way all over the world. And they were successful in doing it because of force. You know, they force the issue all, and force is a crime. It's a crime. But if you're the strongest force on the block, then who's going to police you? You know, I mean, but let's not go there because we're verging on politics now, and I ain't no politician. I don't care what people say. They say that it's not possible to be apolitical and everything is politics. Yeah, okay. GFY. You know, like Elon Musk says, GFY. I'm apolitical. I keep track of what the politicians are doing, sort of, because you have to. But I don't get involved with politics. We were education before liberation. You know, we wanted people to be educated before we were free. We knew we were going to be free during apartheid because it was a ridiculous system. It wasn't going to last. But the liberation before education, people, they won out with limpet mines and AK-47s. They murdered people. And today, the majority of South Africans are uneducated. That's why everything's not working. Because they know how to break down a government. They have no idea how to be a government because they're uneducated. That's a problem. And, you know, all that lies about by the people, for the people. It's by a few people, for a few people. And they're all gone. All those politicians, they all got their white women and their million rands and they quiet. I won't mention any names now, but, you know, people my age know who they are and also where they are, living in the lap of white luxury. I don't know what it is with those white women. You know, if you make it and then you must marry a white woman, they're all brainwashed, man. Los af die wit vrouwmense. A white woman must marry a white man, and a brown woman must marry a brown man, and a black woman must marry a black man. That's how it was made. We made in different colors. You know, so apartheid was right to keep us apart. But you don't change the Bible, man. Don't lie to people. Like believe me, when I got to know white people, when I left high school, they do not behave. Nah. Mm-mm. Behavior? No. Sorry. You are not made in the image of God because God was not a man and God didn't behave like you. At least the people that I got to know. I'm sure I now know that all white people are not like that. But my introduction to white people was like, yeah, I thought white people were so clever, but you stom domme was like. I went to UCT, the lecturer speaks English, you know, like raw, raw English. And then he talks to his English students who went to their whole primary and high school in talking to raw, raw. Then he explains stuff in computer science, and then he's just finished. Up goes the hand. Sorry, Prof, I don't understand what you just said now. And I'm thinking, you know what? English is my second language, but I understood first time. I didn't go back third year. I didn't go back. I went to go work. I got married. I did my third year part time and I still got the upper second. That's how clever I am. You know, I've got a huge brain. But anyway, I rewrote all three Einstein's equations. I mean, all three of Newton's equations. I rewrote Einstein's equation E equals volume times density times c squared. And I'm going to end the lesson there because that's a lot to take in and to digest. You know, like this lesson is only about mass, M. So M, I've changed, M is still M, but M is equal to volume times density. And if you think of mass like that, you know, then it makes a lot of sense. If you explain it to your friend without him watching the video, as soon as you say M is equal to volume times, and you let him think, he's going to say density because it makes sense. I don't know why they just plucked something like mass out of the air and never gave it any definition or explanation. And you know, when you're in high school, you just accept that we have mass and it's in kilograms, you know, and it's not you in science you must define stuff. It must be clearly defined. You must ask what is this and what is that and why is it like that. There must be an answer. If there isn't an answer, then you must go look it up. You know, you young people have got the internet, and you must be careful with the internet. But as long as you look from a proper source and you get a good answer and you double check it, then you know that you know more about it than we knew in our day. You know, I grew up in Wynberg. I read Wynberg Library, finished when I was a teenager. Custom, really. Then I started working at 17 and I could go to City Library in town. You could take out 7 books, not two, 7. Plus you could take out LPs. You won't know what's an LP. That big vinyl records. I used to like guitar. I actually learned a little bit of guitar, but Spanish guitar, you know, because of Spain, Alhambra. And I took out Julian Bream, John Williams, the London Philharmonic. I still like that kind of music. I'm very nerdy. I don't look like a nerd, but I wish I could have a switch here and I can just switch it off and be like, oh, I shouldn't do that because my wife says I'm going to lay one. Like, anyway, I'm talking nonsense now, right? Mass is equal to volume times density.